CFC TV. I'm Alanna Fairey, the fashion content editor for CFC, and I'm joined by Will Anderton today. Will, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me.
No problem. Thanks for having me. What would you like to know?
A good place that I always like to start with interviews like this is I want to get to know a little bit about you and the work that you're doing currently.
That's fine. Yeah, no problem. So yeah, my name's Will Anderton, as you said. I'm based in Cumbria in the Lake District, Northwest England, but I'm studying my master's degree at the University of Stirling in Scotland. My MSc course is, it's sustainable aquaculture, and my project is blue fashion. So my project really is split up into three main pieces of research. So there's a public perception side of it, where I've got a survey which just goes out to the public, and we're just distributing that far and wide. And it's to gather people's perceptions on seafood, perceptions on aquaculture, and their fashion and seafood preferences, along with the demographics, so we can kind of see what kind of people like what. Then the practical side of it is the preservation of fish skins. So we've been in contact with a number of salmon processors, because we're focusing really on Scottish salmon for my project. We've been acquiring those skins, and we've been trying different methods of preservation. So far we've tried salting and cooling, where salting's really simple. All you do is pack the fish skins in salt, it sucks the moisture out, and it has some antimicrobial properties. So it means it can be stored at room temperature for a good amount of time. So that's really the best overall. But we also tried some on ice, just to try 2 different methods. You can also dry them out, but that's not really suitable for Scotland because it's always cold and wet. And freezing, it has to be like instant quick freeze that they use for like sushi grade fish, although that's, the facilities for that are far and few around here. And regular freezing doesn't quite work, because what it does, it forms little ice crystals in the skin, and then it damages the structure of the fish skin, and it's basically lowers the quality of the product. And then the third part of my research is like a feasibility study. So we're kind of looking at the logistics, the costs, and basically seeing, is this kind of possible to turn fish leather into products, and kind of what needs done and whose job is what along the value chain.
Yeah, that all sounds really interesting. And, it's also really interesting because from my understanding, blue fashion really is an emerging sector, and not really a lot of people know what exactly blue fashion is. So can you maybe just kind of explain, what blue fashion really is and why people should start caring about it?
Sure. Yeah. So I would define blue fashion as, fashion items, so clothing, accessories, created from materials that's derived from the sea. So essentially aquatic organisms. So my example, I'm really focusing mainly on fish skin, but I guess I've seen products made from seaweed, and like, shells and things like that. People have used shells and other kind of marine things for fashion for a long time. And obviously harvested in a sustainable manner. So I think that's the big part of it, because obviously blue fashion is just sort of a derivative of green fashion, where green fashion is looking at eco-friendly, renewable products, where it's not with minimal environmental pressures. So I would say a good example of that is farmed fish. So I'm looking at Scottish salmon farming, where it gets a bad rap, but it is actually kind of an environmentally sustainable way of acquiring seafood. And the environmental regulations in Scotland, some of the strictest you're going to get. It's like with the Scottish agency, they are really strict. An example of blue fashion, if you were to make products from Scottish farm salmon skin.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I feel like I'm seeing a lot more fashion brands nowadays turning to alternative means of making leather. I met a company who a lot of their leather products were actually made from cactus, and I did remember talking to someone who uses seaweed in their products. So it's definitely an emerging market. And can you just confirm, is that a very sustainable practice, like using an alternative to like cow leather?
I would say if you do the direct comparison, I'll keep talking about salmon leather, but that's really what I'm focusing on, salmon leather to cow leather. If you look at kind of salmon farming, per kilo of edible product, I know the leather isn't the edible product, but you'd have to, it would be similar, but you'd have to put the weight in of the skins and stuff. But it's per the land use, water use, despite them being farmed in the water, and kind of the feed use is much lower compared to cows. The feed conversion ratio is better. So you've got a lot less feed to grow a salmon a kilo than you do a cow a kilo. And like I said, a lot less land and a lot less water and often other resources. So that's why kind of it would be a good alternative where salmon leather would be appropriate.
Absolutely. And, you touched on it a little bit, but, for me, in my mind, at least, it sounds like the preservation of the fish skins, it seems like a very complex process. Can you just kind of talk me through what that process looks like? Is it as complex as I'm thinking it is, or is it rather simple? Is it just, something that's still you're learning through your research?
I personally wouldn't say it's particularly complex or complicated, considering that I had done it and I didn't really know much about kind of leather processing at all when I started it. Obviously, I think you can fine tune it and tweak it if you're an expert, but as far as the simple preservation goes, it wasn't entirely complicated. Like I said, I did the salting, and I literally just, you get the skins, you put some salt on the bottom of your box, put the fish on it, pour a load of salt on it. I think it was about 25% salt to however much weight of fish. And then you just pack it down and the salt kind of sucks it out. And then all we did was just put it in a box and ship it with a courier. I think it was Parcel Force or someone down to Northampton for William to work on. So it was, I would say it was fairly simple. Yeah.
Yeah, no. And again, because this is such a new and emerging sector. So I feel like there's still a lot of unknowns or people that still don't really know what that looks like. So I'm thrilled that this is really becoming a sector that people are starting to get awareness about, and also maybe think more consciously about when they're buying products or looking at fashion. And, I like that you said that, like, this is part of your master's and it's something that you're doing as part of your research. And so I'm just curious about how your studies have really enriched your work and if there were maybe any challenges that you had to overcome.
I would say a good way to enrich my work is overall, if I'm looking back at like my past academic work, it's kind of widened my knowledge a lot more, because I started off in a like conservation, like marine and freshwater conservation, then moved to sustainable aquaculture, which is kind of similar. But then I moved into like, I'm getting this, my project is all about fashion now. So it's a whole different alley to go down, but at the same time, it all kind of rolls into one, because if this blue fashion is supposed to be, lower environmental pressure, if we're using farm fish, then it's kind of the whole reducing pressure on wild stocks by eating the fish that are farmed. So it's reducing that environmental impact again, less environmental waste because you're using the skins and not throwing them away. So it all kind of rolls into one. So it's the fish farming, then there's a fashion factor, but then there's also the conservation factor, because it's a sustainable method of making, fashion items.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just curious, what are your future ambitions with this project, as well as, the future of blue fashion and how you hope to contribute to that?
What I would like to do is to be a goal is actually kind of establish a sort of fish leather value chain. So kind of organize the almost from the sourcing of the skins to the finished product, whether that is being in charge of sourcing the skins or actually having a company of my own where we make, fish skin products, because I'm kind of looking into the logistics of it all. So I'll have the background information anyway, which really helps with this project. And then just increase spreading awareness and hopefully improving public perception on both seafood, because it gets a bad rap, especially recently. And blue fashion is a part of that. Absolutely. And I would say, sorry, you asked about like the challenges in the previous question, and that was where the challenge came along, was just kind of the lack of knowledge, especially in the UK, because they use fish leather in other countries, in some African countries, and I think South America, and then ancient kind of civilizations, they use it quite a lot. So ancient Egypt and then ancient Arctic communities. But in the UK currently, there's very little research or knowledge on it. So that was kind of a challenge, but that's the challenge that my project is hopefully helping to overcome.
Yeah, absolutely. And, to that point, this was really the first time I had really heard the term blue fashion until, Daniel made the introduction of you and I. And so I definitely think that your research project will definitely close that gap that we're seeing. And, you know, I think it's a really exciting time for you.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, that's my goal. And just to add additionally, I would say when we're looking at blue fashion, with the farm fish specifically, that's helpful for the leather industry as well, because the advantage of farm fish, it's on demand because the fish are always there. I think capture fisheries, they can be a little bit more unreliable in terms of, you know, you can have bad weather, bad catch rates and stuff where the fish is it's ready and it's guaranteed, and once you harvest it, it's harvested on land and it's there, so it's really, really fresh, which is an advantage, because when you are preserving the fish skins, you want to preserve it almost as soon as it's taken off the fish, you know, as quick as possible to reduce decay.
Absolutely. That was all wonderfully said, Will. And that really does summarize all the questions I had for you today. Did you have any final thoughts or comments or anything I didn't ask about your research project or blue fashion that you would like me to know about?
I think that's covered it well, thank you, especially with my final point about the advantage of farmed fish. If that's what anything I wanted to add, that was it. And then again, you know, farmed salmon, especially, it's bad publicity, but there's mistruths from various organizations, which you get with the fashion industry as a whole. But that's kind of what I'm trying to work to, you know, improve the knowledge of it, because it is a sustainable practice, especially when you compare it to traditional meat production and leather production. You know, farmed fish really is the future, as opposed to don't eat seafood, which we've been told by other people.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Will, for taking the time to speak with me. I really enjoyed getting to know you and to learn more about your research and what the future holds for blue fashion. And I really do wish you all the best moving forward.